Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I want to do like a single book review, and I've done quite a few book reviews on my channel, and I'm trying to kind of like get to grips with the kind of format that's best for these, and I think I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I'm going to do shorter videos. This is going to be no more than 10 minutes at the absolute maximum, and I am going to keep myself to that, I promise. And we're only going to look at one single book in this video. And the aim of it is to give you a review of the book generally as a reader. I read an awful lot of books, but I also read with the intent of trying to understand the kind of writer's experience, how the writer has crafted this book, how the writer has crafted this narrative to make it the success that it is, to make it the story that it is. And if there are any lessons that I and you as a aspiring writer, as a novelist, then I look into what kind of techniques that particular author has employed to make that book unique, or what I think is the recipe for success. And we'll just have a lovely chat about it. So, the book that I am reviewing is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, this book was released in 2020, and it actually won the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2020. So it's historical fiction. As you could probably guess by the title Hamnet, it is a story about Hamnet, who is a character who inspired the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare. And just a quick historical note really, Hamlet and Hamnet with the N or the L were interchangeable in history, and I think Maggie O'Farrell used the name Hamnet in the book just to make the character of Hamnet, who we're going to go on to talk about, a little bit more individual. So it's in the very, very late 1500s, so 1596. William Shakespeare is in London. He's a successful playwright in his own, but the contents of the book take place in Stratford-upon-Avon, so the whole book is in Stratford-upon-Avon. Yeah, I'm going to come on to talk about that a little bit more, about the handling of William Shakespeare in this book. But he's there, and his family, his wife Anne/Agnes, again, similar to the use of Hamnet and Hamlet, there was Anne or Agnes. Now, Agnes isn't actually the correct pronunciation, and it does say that very early on in this book. Her name it's spelled Agnes, but it's pronounced Agnes. So it's like a Y instead of the G, so Agnes. So yes, the story kind of centralises around Agnes Hathaway, Agnes Shakespeare, and her family and her children. So William Shakespeare and Agnes Shakespeare had 3 children. They had Susanna, who at the time of this book is about 13, and they had twins, Judith and Hamnet, and they are 11. And it's a really harrowing story of Hamnet's death and how it affects the family. So that's like the main strand of the story, and then peppered throughout the story is Agnes Shakespeare's story really, and how she came to meet William Shakespeare and how they kind of got together. It does a little bit of William Shakespeare's backstory, but for me I feel like this book, whilst it's got Hamnet on the front, it's obviously got William Shakespeare around the periphery. I feel most of this is a book about Agnes Hathaway, Agnes Shakespeare. She is the most amazing character. So sticking with the setting, I think one of the things that I absolutely loved about this book, probably my favourite thing about this book, is the way that Maggie O'Farrell writes the setting and how she immerses us in the 16th century England. And I think that's because she writes it in the present tense. Now, I'm not usually a fan of present tense books. I find them a little bit hard to fall into. But actually, Maggie O'Farrell, maybe because everything else in the book is kind of standardised, it really helped, like it just didn't disturb me too much. It does skip perspective, so at the beginning of the book is written from Hamnet's perspective. It then goes into Agnes, her perspective at times. It goes into William Shakespeare's perspective, but the way that Maggie's written it, you don't get confused at all. What it does is it lends this immediacy to the action. You're kind of discovering what's happening at the same time as all the main characters, and it's really immersive for a historical setting. I think we are used to, like I say, with a lot of books, they're written in the past tense, but with history is always written in the past tense. Whereas when you put something historical in the present tense, it makes it feel like it's happening, like it's leaping off the page. So I think that's definitely something to consider if you're writing a historical fiction book, is what tense do you want to write it in? Do you want to write it in the past tense, or do you want to write it in the present tense? Not something I can do with my Lighthouse book, I don't think, because it goes over too many different time periods and it would just get confusing. But for my second book, it could potentially work quite well, so I'm going to consider that. Another thing about the setting is just the way that Maggie O'Farrell writes sections of description around the place. It's not overly descriptive in a way that makes you want to flick ahead, but it's just beautiful. I mean, there was a section, this is it. So it says, Agnes has a patch of land at Hewlands, leased from her brother, stretching from the house where she was born to the forest. She keeps bees here in hemp-woven skeps, which hum with industrious and absorbed life. There are rows of herbs, flowers, plants, stems that wind up supporting twigs. Agnes's witch garden, her stepmother calls it with a roll of her eyes. Agnes can be seen most weeks moving up and down the rows of these plants, pulling up weeds, laying her hand to the coils of her hives, pruning stems here and there, secreting certain blooms, leaves, pods, petals, seeds in a leather bag at her hip. Today she has been called there by her brother, who dispatched the shepherd's boy to tell her that something was amiss with the bees. They have left the hive and are massing in the trees. Agnes is circling the skeps, listening for whatever the bees are telling her. She is eyeing the swarm in the orchard, a blackish stain spread throughout the branches. Isn't that beautiful? Just the act of it being in the present tense and with that kind of natural description, just absolutely beautiful. And it just made me want to literally dive into the book and go to 16th century Stratford upon Avon, because I was just like, wow. And I know that not all life was like that. Obviously, in this book, we have her horrendous illness and sickness, and I know that there was sickness and poverty and starvation and all of those things, and other political problems going on at the time. But I do think there's a little romanticised part of me that just was absolutely bowled over by the descriptions of the place and the setting. So going on to the characterisation in the book, I think Maggie O'Farrell does a really beautiful job of giving all of the different characters and personalities distinct identities in the book, even the ones that aren't main characters, because really, in terms of main characters, you've got probably 3.5. I would say Agnes Shakespeare is the main character in my opinion. You've then got Hamnet, the young boy, and you've got William Shakespeare. And then the other half, I would say, is Judith. But you've got quite a big cast of secondary characters. So there's Susanna, there's Agnes's mother and father-in-law, there is William Shakespeare's brothers and his sister Eliza. So there's quite a lot of peripheral characters, and what Maggie O'Farrell does really well is she balances giving her secondary characters enough personality so they don't feel one-dimensional, but also doesn't waste time on their stories either. And I think that's really interesting. I would definitely recommend this book if you have a book that has a lot of characters in it and you're trying to write something that's got quite a big cast. Then maybe read this and see how she handles the different characterizations, because I think it's a really interesting way of doing it. And my current book that I'm writing definitely has quite a few of those kind of peripheral characters, so I want to make sure that they are well balanced. So I'm definitely going to look at that. So to go on to talking about how William Shakespeare is handled in this book, because obviously he is a big character, enormous character, and if you are writing any book that has William Shakespeare in it, there's going to be a real tussle to not allow him to overshadow the characters in the storyline. But Maggie O'Farrell has absolutely got the balance right in this book. This is a female book. It feels very feminine. Maybe this was just my reading of it, but it felt like the female characters were stronger, more prominent than the male characters. So William Shakespeare, you hear more about him when he's young, and it's more about how he was, there's allegations that he's beaten by his father, and that very much creates this kind of introverted personality. But I mean, he was a literary genius, he was a creative genius, and you know, creative people very often exist in a different kind of world. They see the world very differently, and you get that from the very beginning, that he's kind of like a bit of a dreamer, he's got a huge imagination. And then there's the storyline of when he meets Agnes and how they kind of get together, so that's all really beautiful. And then how they kind of set up home together, and it's really lovely to see the side of a historical character that we know so much about how he lived in London, but it was nice to kind of imagine a completely different side to his life, his early years. And I think it really helped to separate William from William Shakespeare, or from Shakespeare. You know, I think the biggest point of this is really. If you want to write about a big historical character, like, let's say, for example, you wanted to write a book about Henry VIII and you think, oh, but everybody's written about Henry VIII. What about a novel set at the court of Henry VIII that's told from the perspective of the servants? Do you know what I mean? There's different ways to tell somebody's story. And I think that's probably what makes the Shardlake books by C.J. Sansom so popular, is because they're set in Tudor London, but the Tudor court is kind of on the periphery. You know, if you want to write something that is around a specific period in history or a specific character, a very famous person, this is a really good book to read to give you a sense of how to do that. So that's it. I think I've probably talked enough. I know for a fact that I've got more than 10 minutes worth of footage in this. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is putting the full-length version of this onto my Patreon. So if you would like to see the full-length version, you can join my Patreon. The links for Patreon are in the description box, so you can link straight through and have a look. And my current patrons are scrolling the screen. Thank you so much to all my current patrons. And yeah, I'll put the full-length version on there, and then there'll be this kind of 10-minute edited version on here on YouTube. So yeah, thank you very much. What did you think? Have you read Hamnet? Is there anything that I missed out that you think is really important that people could learn from the book in terms of like how to write a book of their own? If so, pop it in the description. And are there any other books that you would like me to do kind of like a 10-minute bite-sized review of? And did you like the format? Did you like the idea of like a quick 10-minute review more than kind of an in-depth dive into it? Let me know what you think. And if you're not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And oh, what shall we do if we've got this far? A B, because Agnes Shakespeare was battling with the bees, wasn't she, in that extract that I read out. So yeah, if you have watched this far in the video, put a little B into the comments, and then I'll know those people who've watched to the very end. Right, I'm going to go. Enjoy Hamnet if you read it. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks guys, I'll see you soon.